A young woman gets stranded on a deserted highway with a psycho killer who has a very strong mentality, is calm, and enjoys every moment of her struggle. But she never gives up and puts up a terrifying fight for survival. So, how she saves herself from the psycho killer is the plot. And once again, welcome back to our channel Bunny Recaps. Let's get into the movie. The movie begins with a young woman, Mallory, our protagonist, who is a bride and going to her marriage rehearsal. She takes a break near a shop. And she seems to be confused and disturbed because her fiancé is a workaholic. She then starts her journey and enjoys the scenery and the music. As she keeps on driving, meanwhile she gets a call from her fiancé. And he cancels the honeymoon trip, so she feels mood off and goes down a service road. Since she intends to take a shortcut to her destination, and suddenly her car breaks down. She then makes every effort in vain to start the engine. She turns around to see a completely barren place. Then she tries to open the last soda drink. But it explodes and soaks her clothes. When she changes her dress, unexpectedly a guy arrives. Mallory is shocked to see him, whose name is Chris, approaching her nicely. He is not only friendly, but also handsome. And he asks her to let himself help her out. He starts chatting in a friendly manner, he even cracks jokes and made her giggle. He also describes how trekking is enjoyable. Both of them are happy and relieved when he successfully finishes the fixing. Mallory thanks him and then drives off. However, out of guilt, she stops and offers to give him a ride. They quickly became close and enjoyed speaking and other activities together. Additionally, he extends an invitation for her to stay at a hotel so she can eat and continue her drive away. He begins acting strange and attempts to impress her along the way. He tells about how fate brought them together and how their relationship was intended, and speaks inappropriate things to her. Soon after, Mallory realizes his nefarious intentions and asks him to get out of the car. He acts aggressively and forces her to drive to the hotel, which he mentioned earlier. Out of no other option, she agrees and continues driving. Later she noticed he is not wearing a seatbelt, and there is a curve sign. She decides to flee by driving quickly towards a guardrail close to the curve, thinking that he could fall out of the vehicle. She starts to drive fast and suddenly he notices and also tries to stop her. But the car flies down and crashed. After some time, Mallory wakes up and sees the car hanging upside down in the middle of the riverfront from branches. Unfortunately, she could not exit the car since her leg is stuck and unable to remove. She made numerous attempts to free herself but was unsuccessful. She screams in terror and cries out for assistance, pleading with anybody close to assist her. Now that she thinks about Chris, she searches out for him and discovers him unconsciously lying outside the vehicle. Sometime later, Chris begins to slowly wake up. And in the meantime, Mallory discovers his knife lying nearby and grabs and hides it. Chris approaches now and sees that her leg is stuck. He smiles at her and suggests her to get herself out of there, even though she pleads for his assistance. Mallory continues to plead for rescue while he finally leaves her there to die. The night falls and Mallory is still alone in the pitch-black forest. The temperature drops despite wearing a hoodie and other clothing. She still faces other issues along with the cold. Mallory notices that there are wild creatures walking around her car because it is in a forest, and puts on the headlights and a torch inside the vehicle. As a result, the animals get scared and flee. She is relieved the following morning for having survived a day in the middle of the wilderness. She finishes the rest of the water and spits some back for the next time. She searches the car for items that she can use to survive and finds Chris's wallet. The entire day passes with no sign of help. Mallory searches the area with her cracked car mirror for any sign of hope. Chris shows up. He appears to be fine and happy. Additionally, he mockingly tells her that fate is a funny thing and takes pleasure in every moment of her sufferings. Mallory is left without food and water, even though he brought them. But he did it to mock her by having and drinking them in front of her. Before departing, Chris explains that he discovered an empty cabin. When he looks at Mallory, he assumes she won't survive another night. And he leaves with that hope as Mallory begs and cries for help. On the third night, she luckily discovers a lighter and lights it to spend the night so that she can have some heat in the dead of cold. With these exhausting days, she forgets herself and falls asleep after several hours. But not for too long. A gang of rats playing on her awakens her. Mallory is now weary of everything and becomes hostile, stabbing it with the knife. When she gets too hungry, she removes a strip of its meat and burns it with the lighter before devouring it. The next morning, she suddenly wakes up by hearing her cell phone vibrate and discovers a single ray of hope. But Chris returns to destroy all of her hope. She hides her phone as soon as she notices Chris approaching. Chris begins telling her about the cabin and how the family who lives there has returned. The phone suddenly vibrates and she quickly hides it from stealing. But Chris eventually succeeds in snatching her phone and smashing it. Chris gives a saw intended to help her out. At first Mallory thought it's so to cut through the door. But he informs her that if she does not chop off her leg, she is going to die, and he adds that this is the only option given by fate. By saying he disappear again. Mallory yells in frustration as she recalls what Chris told her to do. When night falls, Mallory is thirsty because she hasn't had any water in a long time. So she tries to take a sip of her pee, but God intervenes with a massive rainstorm. It begins to rain heavily. She devoured the rainwater she had caught from a cover. This gives her hope of survival. Meanwhile, she turns on the radio, where they announce that the roads are flooding due to the rainfall. People are using small roads as the main roads are flooded. Soon after, a car passes by and it is none other than him. Chris arrives to say his goodbye. As he pulls over, Mallory creates a plan in which she applies the blood of the dead rat to her foot and pretends to be dead. She makes it appear as if she died while attempting to chop her foot off. Chris approaches too close to check on her, and Mallory successfully pierces his gut, stealing his car keys, setting the car alarm, and throwing them outside, where he cannot find them. When a patrol car nears the suspicious car, Mallory yells to get his attention. Because the storm is so loud, Mallory's voice is drowned out by the thunder. Chris, on the other hand, claims to have misplaced his keys and struggles to open his car. Chris is offered a ride to a nearby cabin by the patrol officer. While the car begins to float as a result of the flood, Mallory loses her patience and begins to cut her leg off. But she can only make simple cuts. Finally, with the help of the water, her leg is freed. She is entirely free to leave this secluded area. As Mallory approaches a nearby cabin, she hears some terrifying screams, prompting her to go inside, where her leg is caught in a bear trap and she manages to escape. She goes to the cabin where Chris is staying. She also sees him kill the police officer and the homeowners while holding their daughter Katie as a hostage. Chris is now perhaps trying on a patrol officer's uniform for his upcoming evil plan. Meanwhile, Mallory discovers the officer's gun and hurriedly goes out to the second floor, dodging Chris's notice. She sneaks in and sees Katie tied up on the bed, so she frees her. As Chris, the psycho, arrives, Mallory points a gun at him and threatens to shoot him if he moves. As Katie flees, he attacks Mallory. Mallory tackles Chris and escapes. Then, Chris back to search.
I ought to thank you for that. This was how I hoped it would end. I always knew it would happen.
While standing in the balcony, Mallory finally pushes him off a second-story balcony. In a bear trap, he falls and crushes his leg. She limps downstairs, starts mocking him, enjoys his pain, and offers him his knife. And tells him she'll give him the same chance he gave her. It is now her turn to treat him as he has treated her. They left the place, and Chris becomes unconscious. The movie ends. The movie reflects, never trust anyone blindly. And never underestimate anyone. Personally, I like Mallory guts. She has no responsibility to save the girl or anyone. But she knows the pain and went inside and did what she can. Thanks for subscribing to us. We have planned to upload more interesting world-class movies with unique stories. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and share your priceless comments. It will help us to reach other movie lovers. And do subscribe and join our family for more upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.